Welcome back to Mission of the Chosen. Today we step into the shadows of surveillance, where people sent to monitor your every move ended up more broken than before. What was meant to crush you only consumed them, and their downfall holds lessons you need to hear. They thought this was going to be an easy job. Watch you, track your steps, collect details about your life as if you were some character in a file. They imagined it like scrolling through notes, a detached assignment, something they could do on autopilot. But they didn't understand what they were walking into. Because watching someone who carries alignment, purpose, and resilience isn't neutral, it's dangerous. It transforms into a battlefield they weren't trained for. Think about it. Every time they leaned closer, hoping to find weaknesses, they only exposed their own. They weren't prepared for the intensity of your presence. They weren't ready for the silence that screamed louder than their gossip. They didn't expect your peace to be so heavy that it felt like judgment pressing down on their chaos. Your existence itself became the mirror, reflecting back their jealousy, laziness, and insecurity. And the longer they stayed, the more unbearable that reflection became. This is why they're shaken. You don't defeat people like this by swinging swords or shouting louder. You defeat them by being unshakably yourself. That's why their assignment collapsed. They thought monitoring would be control, but attention has a cost. The cost is exposure, and when you look too closely at light, it doesn't dim for your comfort, it burns your eyes. Your enemies underestimated what silence could do. They assumed that if you weren't arguing, you were weak. If you weren't defending yourself, you were defeated. But silence became your fortress. Discipline became your shield. Restraint turned into their torment, because silence to a restless soul is not comfort, it's punishment. And the more you refused to play their game, the more chaotic their world became. They walked into your energy field thinking it would be an easy harvest. Instead, it became a storm they couldn't endure. Watching you was like walking into a lion's den with nothing but a paper shield. They weren't prepared for the weight of it, the air charged with a strength they couldn't measure, and in that space, every weakness they carried screamed louder. History has seen this before. Look at fallen empires. Look at systems that built entire networks of spies and secret watchers. It wasn't the people they tried to control who broke first, it was the watchers themselves. Too much staring into the lives of the strong fractures the fragile. The human psyche isn't designed to gaze into greatness without consequence. Even modern psychology confirms it. Constant surveillance destroys the one doing the watching faster than the one being watched. Obsession eats the mind from the inside out. That's why their whispers now sound so different. They no longer sound confident. They sound drained. Some of them admit, nobody told us it would be like this. Others confess, we weren't supposed to get hurt, but they did get hurt because they entered waters they weren't built for. And when you step into an ocean without knowing how to swim, the ocean doesn't pity you. It pulls you under. Meanwhile, you kept walking forward. You refused to be pulled into the drama. You chose to build in silence, letting your discipline speak louder than any rumor. You redirected your energy toward growth while they wasted theirs on gossip. That's why they're exhausted and you're still rising. That's why they sit in restless circles, whispering doubts, while your path keeps unfolding in precision. The irony is sharp. They sent monitors expecting you to fall apart under pressure, but the monitors themselves fell apart instead. They thought they were hunters, but they walked away shaking like prey. The haunted house was never you, it was their own intentions echoing back at them. Your presence became the mirror exposing their shadows. Energy works like this. It cannot be destroyed, only transferred. Every dart they threw bounced back harder, sharper, and faster. Their attempt to drain you only drained themselves. Their schemes didn't collapse because you fought back, they collapsed because alignment cannot be broken. That's why you're still here. That's why your path is intact. Because you refused to bend to noise, and the universe refused to let injustice go unanswered. They wanted you to crack, but every attempt only revealed your resilience. They wanted to control your narrative, but every word they spoke only revealed their own desperation. And so the watchers tremble. They whisper, I didn't sign up for this. I want out. Not because they pity you, but because they can't handle the pain that comes with trying to stand against alignment. The battlefield consumed them, not you. Here's the bigger truth, you are not just surviving this. You are the battlefield itself. Every person sent to monitor you will walk away scarred because they weren't prepared for the weight of your presence. they thought they could control, but instead they were confronted by everything they're not, and that torment is unbearable to a soul not built for it. This is the opening strike, the warning shot. If you've felt eyes on you, understand this. Those eyes don't return home the same. They return scarred. They return shaken. They return begging for escape. Drop 777 inches the comments if you felt this truth. Hit like and subscribe so this message finds the people who need it most, because we're not just talking about content here. We're spreading light against darkness. Every share is a ripple of strength across the battlefield. And now the story deepens, because the Watchers who came back broken didn't just return empty-handed, they carried something worse. Betrayal brewing in their own camp. When those Watchers came back rattled, it didn't end with their own sleepless nights. Their trembling voices carried into the very circles that sent them, and suddenly the confidence that once held them together began to fracture. Promises that once sounded strong started to feel hollow. The words they spoke to each other, those secret oaths whispered in quiet rooms, began to splinter like glass. That's what happens when loyalty is built on greed. It always cracks. They didn't bind themselves together with truth or honor. They were united by a common target, you. They promised each other that if they worked together, if they aligned in their schemes, victory was guaranteed. They shook hands in shadows, smiling, whispering, "This will be easy. We'll handle it. Just wait." But promises forged in envy are not promises at all. They are traps waiting to collapse. And collapse is exactly what began to unfold. Think of it this way. Imagine a group of thieves planning a grand heist. They gather around, their voices filled with excitement. Before they've even entered the vault, they divide the riches in their imagination. You'll get this. I'll take that. Soon we'll be wealthy. Soon we'll rise above. But when they finally break in, the vault is empty, alarms are blaring, and their escape is chaos. That's exactly what your enemies experienced. They promised each other glory, but all they received was ruin. And here's the hidden wound. It's not just about failure, it's about betrayal. Psychology shows that when trust is broken, the brain reacts as if the body has been physically wounded. That's why betrayal aches so deeply. It's not just emotional pain, it's a neurological injury. Now multiply that across an entire alliance. Imagine an entire group of people realizing at the same time that the rewards they were promised don't exist. Their camp doesn't just look messy, it bleeds distrust. It groans with suspicion. That's the environment they now live in. Suspicion in every glance, side conversations behind closed doors, arguments breaking out over who lied, who exaggerated, who dragged them into something that ended with scars instead of success. They promised each other that tearing you down would be profitable, but the only ones profiting are the lessons they never wanted to face. Look closer at history, it's the same script. Julius Caesar, betrayed by those who once pledged loyalty. Benedict Arnold, stained forever by promises sold for greed. Even kings lost kingdoms because allies whispered oaths they had no intention of keeping. Broken promises don't just create chaos, they create collapse. And collapse is exactly what your enemies are living through right now. The promises they made to one another are breaking like rotten boards beneath their feet. What they thought was firm ground was actually quicksand. Every attempt to pull themselves higher drags them lower, because betrayal is contagious. Once one voice says, "You lied to me," the infection spreads. Suddenly everyone is suspicious, everyone is restless, everyone wants out. And here's the beauty, you didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to fight their alliances. You didn't have to expose their lies. They did that to themselves. While they were busy promising each other success at your expense, you were busy investing in your growth. While they whispered oaths in secret, you whispered prayers of alignment. And look at the results. Their foundation is cracked. Their alliances are shattered, while yours grows stronger with every step you take. Now imagine their frustration. They sit in circles, pointing fingers. One says, "You told me this would work." Another spits, "I gave up everything for this." A third hisses, "You lied to us all." The same mouths that once chanted in unison against you are now snapping at one another, tearing each other apart with the same intensity they once aimed at you. Their camp is no longer a camp. It's a battlefield of betrayal. And betrayal is the worst enemy. They can't defend against it, because it lives inside them. Think of it like a spider weaving a web with confidence. It believes the trap will hold prey, that food will come easy. But when the prey escapes and the web collapses, the spider is the one caught in its own threads. That's your enemies right now. They spun a web of promises, but they're the ones tangled in it. The trap they built for you has become the noose that chokes them. And don't underestimate what this means for you. Their failure is your confirmation. Their collapse is your evidence that truth cannot be outmaneuvered. They promised one another your downfall, but your rise was already written. They can't undo what was set in motion by the universe. Their oaths weren't sacred. They were contracts of convenience. And contracts built on lies never survive the light. This is why their alliances are crumbling. They look at each other now not with trust, but with paranoia. Their shoulders are tense. Their meetings end in anger. Every word spoken is measured because no one knows who will turn next. The same manipulation they once aimed at you is now turned inward, infecting their own alliances. And each time betrayal spreads, another voice whispers the same line, "I want out." You need to understand how powerful that island. They no longer fear you as much as they fear each other. Their betrayal has created a cycle they can't escape. They can't focus on you anymore because they're too busy surviving the chaos within their own camp. And here's the irony: they thought tearing you down would make them strong, but the only strength they've lost is their unity. They thought betrayal would weaken you, but betrayal only weakened them. They thought lies could hold hands forever, but lies can't hold hands at all. So stand firm. Their collapse is the universe's proof that truth doesn't need help to win. Promises made in shadows dissolve in the light. And while they scramble in the wreckage, your path keeps unfolding, piece by piece, step by step, stronger and sharper than before. Because here's the twist: broken promises don't just destroy alliances. They reveal something darker, and what surfaced next shook even their most confident leaders. When betrayal started spreading among them, it wasn't just whispers of broken promises that tore their unity apart. It was the realization that you had refused to fall into the very traps they set. That refusal shook them to their core. Understand this: their schemes depended on your blindness. They painted the traps with enticing colors. They dangled bait they thought you couldn't resist. Validation, attention, acceptance, maybe even love disguised as loyalty. They thought you would ignore the red flags and walk straight into their snare. But you didn't. You saw it. You heard the warning bells in your spirit, and you turned away before the cage could close. And that single act, the decision to trust your instincts, crushed their confidence. Because manipulators thrive only when people ignore the obvious. A red flag dismissed is their victory. But when you refused, you forced them to face failure they couldn't explain away. Let's put it into a picture. Imagine a hunter setting a snare deep in the forest. He ties the rope, sprinkles food, and hides nearby with a smug grin. He's already celebrating his victory in his mind. But when the animal approaches, it pauses. It senses something unnatural. The rope is too new, the scent too strange. Instead of stepping forward, it walks away. The hunter's heart sinks, his energy wasted, his arrogance exposed. That's exactly how they felt when you refused to ignore the red flags. Science even backs this up. Psychologists call it negativity bias. The brain is wired to detect threats faster than rewards. It's a survival instinct, a design to keep us alive. Most people silence that voice inside, telling themselves, "It's nothing, I'm overthinking." But you didn't. You paid attention. You trusted that instinct. And because of that, you avoided their trap and destroyed their illusion of control. Think about how infuriating that is for them. They believed they had studied you so well that they knew what you wanted, what you craved, what you couldn't resist. They thought you'd be desperate enough to step into their bait. But when you refused, their whole plan collapsed. And the anger that follows isn't logical, it's emotional. They don't just feel disappointed, they feel exposed. Because your refusal proves what they tried so hard to deny. Their power was an illusion. This is why they rage against you. This is why they spread lies, twist your story, call you arrogant or cold. It's not about who you are, it's about the fact that you didn't take the bait. And when someone refuses to play, manipulators lose their entire script. Let's ground this with something historical. Think about great leaders who refused to ignore warnings. Nelson Mandela saw through promises that were never meant to free him. and instead of falling for shallow negotiations, he stood firm, waiting for the real shift to come. Joan of Arc refused to bow to manipulation, even when powerful men tried to corner her with false loyalty. Each time someone refused to accept red flags, they left their enemies enraged, because the trap that was meant to hold became a public humiliation for the ones who built it. And here's where it cuts deeper. Your enemies weren't just mad that you walked away, they were haunted by how easily you saw through them. Because it revealed something they never wanted to face. Their patterns are predictable. Their manipulation isn't unique. Their red flags shine brighter than they thought. And when you spotted them without hesitation, it shattered their pride. Now picture the fallout. Behind closed doors, they argue with each other. Why didn't it work? You said this would be easy. Another hisses. I thought they'd fall for it. Anyone else would have. And the tension grows because the blame has to go somewhere. The finger pointing intensifies, and their alliance cracks even wider. Meanwhile, your refusal becomes your protection. Every time you walked away from what didn't feel right, you weren't just saving yourself from a trap, you were shattering their confidence. You forced them to see that not everyone is blind, not everyone is desperate, not everyone is willing to trade dignity for approval. That is what terrifies them most. You saw them clearly, and once someone is truly seen, their mask loses power. This is why they're restless now, because every trap you avoided makes them question their own worth. Every refusal makes them doubt their ability to control anyone, and manipulators without control spiral into chaos. But let's take it deeper. Red flags don't just protect you from mistakes, they destroy the illusion of inevitability. Your enemies believed it was inevitable that you'd fall. They believed the outcome was already written, but your refusal rewrote the story in front of their eyes, and now they live with the torment of knowing that their efforts not only failed but backfired. Think of it like a chessboard. They thought they had cornered your king. Every piece was in place, and they were already celebrating checkmate. But in one move, a refusal to play their game, you flipped the board. The strategy collapsed, the celebration froze, and all they were left with was confusion and shame. And don't miss this, the universe whispered to you. Those red flags weren't random, they were warnings, signals, protection. Every instinct you trusted was alignment guiding you out of their trap. Every step you refused to take was the universe whispering, not this way, not this person, not this deal. So yes, they are furious. They whisper your name with bitterness. They gossip about your decisions. They throw your silence back at you as if it's arrogance. But the truth is, their anger is proof of your victory. If they weren't defeated, they wouldn't be this loud. If they still believed in their control, they wouldn't be this restless. And while they spiral, you rise, because every refusal sharpened you, every red flag you honored strengthened your discernment. And now, their games have no power over you. Their anger is empty because you no longer walk into spaces you weren't meant to enter. But here's the most important truth, you didn't just protect yourself. By refusing to ignore the signs, you turned their own trap into their downfall. The energy they poured into catching you has collapsed on their own heads. The time they wasted planning has left them behind. The shame they tried to throw on you has become the shame they carry in their own camp. And what comes next is worse for them, because refusing the red flags wasn't the only move you made. Your decision to walk away exposed something else, the sickening aftermath of their mistakes. The moment you refused to step into their traps, something irreversible happened. Their carefully drawn plans didn't just fail, they poisoned their own camp. Every choice they made, every alliance they signed, every whisper spoken in secrecy came back like smoke in their lungs. What they thought was strategy has become sickness, and I don't mean just a metaphorical sickness. You can see it in their faces, in the way they carry themselves now. Their eyes are restless, their shoulders tense, their energy heavy. Because betrayal and manipulation aren't just mental games, they take a toll on the body. Science has confirmed it. When guilt festers, when lies pile up, the body registers that weight, headaches, stomach pain, sleepless nights, even premature aging. Their nervous systems have become their punishment. This is what happens when people try to play with fire and assume they're immune to burns. Picture someone laughing as they toss sparks around a room, confident that nothing will ignite. But the sparks land on their own clothes, and soon flames are licking at their skin. They run in circles, panicked, screaming, but there's no one left to save them. That's the aftermath of their choices. They believed messing with you was harmless. They convinced themselves that creating chaos in your path would never come back to them. But the universe keeps receipts. Every action carries weight, and what they poured into the world has returned to sit on their shoulders. That's why some of them can't sleep. That's why others are pacing their floors at night, nauseous with regret, haunted by shadows they don't speak about. It's not because they pity you, it's because they are choking on their own decisions. And here's where it cuts deeper. This sickness doesn't stay hidden. People around them see it. Their loved ones notice the weight they're carrying. Their co-workers feel the agitation in their presence. Their alliances grow restless with the heaviness they bring. Because you can't carry deception and expect to keep it invisible, it leaks out of your pores, it speaks in your tone, it shows in the way your eyes avoid the mirror. Think of guilt like a shadow that grows longer the more you run from it. At first, they thought they could outrun it. They drowned themselves in distractions, filled their schedules with noise, told themselves the consequences wouldn't matter, but guilt waits. And when the noise stops, when the lights go out, it whispers louder than ever. That's why they're unraveling. Because even when you don't speak, even when you don't retaliate, their choices echo back to them. The very traps they dug for you have become pits they've fallen into themselves. You've seen it play out in history. Leaders who silenced their conscience in the name of ambition ended up destroyed from within. Pharaoh ignored warnings until plagues consumed his land. Empires that thrived on injustice collapsed under the weight of their own cruelty. The pattern is timeless. When warnings are ignored, the aftermath is always destruction. And your enemies ignored the warnings. They saw the signs. They felt the nudges to stop, to walk away, to leave you alone. But arrogance blinded them. They mistook patience for weakness. They mistook silence for surrender. They told themselves, nothing will happen, but something always happens. And when it came, it didn't land on you, it landed on them. Now, their lives are unraveling. Opportunities they thought were certain are slipping away. Relationships they depended on are fracturing. Even their health is cracking under the pressure. And still, they whisper excuses. Still, they pretend it isn't connected. But deep down, they know the energy they threw out has circled back. And you are untouched. Because the fire they thought would consume you only revealed their lack of control. You are rising, stitched together with precision, while they stumble under the weight of the very smoke they created. This is the aftermath of their mistakes. It's not quick. It's slow, dragging, suffocating. And that makes it worse. Because a quick fall is over fast, but slow torment is inescapable. It lingers in their minds, in their bodies, in their daily routines. And here's the haunting part. They don't get to choose when it ends. They can't control the consequences anymore. Once the wheel of cause and effect begins turning, it doesn't stop until the lesson is complete. That's why some of them are whispering now, this isn't what we signed up for. That's why others are pacing, clutching their stomachs, muttering, I just want out. But there's no exit from consequences. Once the seeds are planted, the harvest comes. And this harvest isn't wheat, it's thorns. So don't be surprised when you hear about their restlessness. Don't be shocked when you see their faces carrying years they haven't lived. The universe is showing you something. Their mistakes didn't touch you, they touched themselves. The sickening aftermath is their burden to carry, not yours. And yet, the story doesn't end here. Because the universe is generous with warnings. It doesn't just strike without sending signs first. And the chilling truth is this. Every one of your enemies received a warning before their collapse. They heard the whisper, they saw the red lights, they felt the nudge to stop, but they ignored it. And when warnings are ignored, judgment arrives. Every collapse begins with a warning, and make no mistake, your enemies were warned. The universe is never silent before destruction. It whispers, it nudges, it even shouts. But pride always makes people deaf. They were told in subtle ways, dreams that unsettled them, conversations that carried hidden truths, moments where everything inside them screamed, stop. And yet, instead of listening, they pushed forward. They mistook patience for weakness. They mistook grace for permission. They thought fate could be outsmarted, that divine order could be manipulated. But the universe doesn't play by their rules, and now they are paying for ignoring what was always clear. Imagine a driver on a busy road. The first red light flashes, he ignores it. The second turns red, he speeds through. By the third, he's laughing, convinced the rules don't apply to him. But just around the corner, a head-on collision waits, unavoidable and merciless. That's what happened with your enemies. They laughed at the warnings. They told themselves, nothing's happening, so we must be safe. But the crash was always coming. And when it hit, it wasn't you who shattered, it was them. This is the pattern history shows us. Pharaoh ignored Moses' warning to let the people go, and his empire drowned in its arrogance. Leaders in every age dismissed prophets, seers, and sages until kingdoms fell under their pride. Even in modern life we see it. Corporations that ignore ethical warnings collapse under scandal. Relationships that ignore signs of betrayal end in heartbreak. Warnings are always given. It is arrogance that blinds. Your enemies didn't just miss one warning, they missed many. And with each one ignored, their downfall became sharper. At first it was a whisper, leave this one alone. Then it became a shout, closed doors, blocked opportunities, failed schemes. But still they pushed forward. Still they gathered others, calling in reinforcements, convincing themselves that numbers would save them. They confused noise for power. They mistook crowd size for destiny. But the universe doesn't measure numbers, it weighs truth. And when truth landed on the scales, their alliances had no weight at all. That's why you're watching them collapse now. The walls of their schemes are falling inward. The people they pulled into their chaos are questioning, why are we here? Why didn't we listen? Why didn't we stop? The very warnings they ignored have now become the very judgments they can't escape. And here's the part they never saw coming. When you ignore divine warnings, you don't just hurt yourself, you curse your entire camp. Because the same energy that pulled them together is now the energy pulling them apart. Finger pointing, arguments, fear, suspicion. What was once whispered as confidence is now shouted as regret. Picture a group of climbers roped together on a mountain. One warns, the ice is thin, don't step there. But the leader ignores it, striding forward. The ice cracks, and suddenly the entire group is dangling, screaming, paying the price for one person's arrogance. That's your enemies right now. Their arrogance didn't just ruin their own lives, it dragged down everyone tied to them. And here's where the story sharpens. They thought they were untouchable. They thought warnings didn't apply to them. But arrogance always ends the same way, broken, ashamed, and trembling under judgment. The truth is, you don't have to scream warnings for them to be valid. The universe delivers them in silence, in subtle shifts, in closed doors. And ignoring those is worse than defiance, it's self-destruction. That's why you must never envy those who seem to thrive in schemes. You may see them laughing today, but their laughter is only the echo of ignored warnings. The bill is always coming due. And when it does, it will be heavier than they ever imagined. So where does this leave you? In peace. Because the same warnings they ignored you listened to. When your spirit said, not this way, you turned. When you felt the unease of a red flag, you walked away. You trusted the whispers. And that obedience, quiet as it seemed, became your protection. That's why you're still here. That's why you're untouched while they unravel. You honored the signals they mocked. You respected the boundaries they broke. And because of that, judgment passed over you and landed squarely on them. And now, look at their camp. What once looked like a united circle has become a fractured mess. The same people who swore loyalty to each other are now clawing at one another, desperate to escape the crash they helped create. Because warnings ignored don't just lead to collapse, they lead to betrayal. And betrayal, once it enters, devours everything. Betrayal always finds its way into alliances built on lies. It doesn't arrive as a loud crash, it creeps in through suspicion, through sideways glances, through whispers that grow louder in the silence of failure. That's what's happening in their camp now. What once looked like unity is unraveling before their eyes. They thought numbers could overpower you. They believed that gathering together in shadows, pooling their energy, would make them unstoppable. But darkness never sustains unity. It devours itself first. Their circle wasn't held together by loyalty. It wasn't bound by love. It was glued with greed, jealousy, and shared hatred of you. And when that's the glue, it doesn't take long for betrayal to crack the bond. Think of it this way. Imagine a ship made not of steel but of rotting wood. At the harbor, it looks strong. The paint shines. The sails are tall. The crew is confident. But the moment the storm arrives, the cracks reveal themselves. Water rushes in, the boards splinter, and panic spreads. That's their alliance. They stood shoulder to shoulder with confidence, shouting plans of victory. But as soon as truth hit like a storm, the wood of their promises began to split, and now the crew is scrambling, blaming one another as the ship sinks beneath them. You don't even need to interfere. They are destroying themselves. Betrayal has become their storm, tearing through their circle like wind through fragile glass. One by one, the whispers grow. You lied to me. This was supposed to be easy. I didn't sign up for this. The same mouths that once chanted against you are now biting each other. That's how darkness operates. When there's no truth at the foundation, betrayal always wins in the end. Psychologists have studied this exact pattern. Groups bound together by manipulation collapse faster than those bound by trust. Without a foundation of honesty, cohesion turns to chaos. That's why their circle is falling apart now. Their trust was never real, their promises were never sincere, and betrayal is simply exposing what was always there. And maybe you wonder, why does their betrayal feel so dramatic, so vicious? Because people who betray will always betray again. If they were willing to turn on you, it was only a matter of time before they turned on each other. Loyalty built on hate isn't loyalty at all, it's temporary convenience. Once the reward disappears, the knives come out. Now picture this, a pack of wolves circling prey, confident in their strength. But suddenly, the prey isn't where they expected. They grow restless, they grow hungry. And instead of finding food, they turn on one another. That's what's happening to your enemies. You weren't consumed by their schemes, so now they are consuming each other. This betrayal is deeper than broken promises. It's the unraveling of identity. Some of them built their entire confidence on the idea that they were united, that together they could crush you. Now that unity is fractured, and they are left with nothing but paranoia. Every conversation feels like a trap. Every smile feels fake. Every handshake feels like a setup. They are learning the hard truth. People who unite to destroy others will always end up destroying themselves. And here's the irony, they thought betrayal would weaken you, but betrayal only weakened them. They thought division would make you crumble, but division has only devoured their own camp. While they claw at one another, you stand steady. While they collapse, you continue to rise. Their downfall isn't your doing. It's the natural order. Lies can't hold hands for long. This collapse isn't quiet, it's chaotic. Accusations fly like arrows. Suspicion spreads like wildfire. And the same people who once cheered together are now whispering behind each other's backs. They used betrayal as a weapon against you, but betrayal has now become the fire consuming their own camp. Think back through history. Julius Caesar didn't fall because of foreign enemies, he fell because of betrayal from those closest to him. Armies have lost wars not because of stronger opponents, but because betrayal rotted their ranks from within. Leaders have lost kingdoms not from outside threats, but from the knives of those they trusted. That's the power of betrayal. It doesn't knock at the front door, it rises from within, and by the time it's revealed, the damage is already done. Your enemies are living that now. Betrayal is eating their alliances alive. And while they fight among themselves, here's what you need to see. You're untouched. You didn't have to defend yourself. You didn't have to swing at them. You simply walked in truth, and truth dismantled their lies. Your silence, your refusal to engage in their noise, has become the sword they can't withstand. It's important to understand this. Betrayal is contagious. Once it starts, it spreads fast. And right now, their entire camp is infected. They don't trust one another anymore. They can't strategize anymore. They can't even focus on you because they're too busy surviving the chaos inside their own group. But betrayal wasn't the end. Betrayal opened the door to something far darker, because in their desperation to stop you, some of them tried to summon forces they didn't understand, and those forces have now turned against them. When betrayal began to devour their camp, fear set in. And fear does something dangerous to desperate people. It drives them to reach for powers they don't understand. That's exactly what your enemies did. In their arrogance, in their obsession with stopping you, some of them turned to darkness. They called on energies they couldn't control. They whispered names they didn't respect. They performed rituals they barely understood. They summoned shadows, convinced those shadows would obey their command. But darkness never serves, it only consumes. What they didn't realize is that every contract with darkness demands payment. Nothing in that realm comes free. You can't summon chaos and expect to control it. You can't invite shadows and expect them to leave when you're finished. What they thought was a weapon has become their prison. Picture this. Someone unleashes a wild beast from a cage, pointing it toward their enemy. They laugh, certain it will attack on command, but instead, the beast turns around and mauls its master. That's exactly what happened when they tried to weaponize darkness against you. The energy didn't land where they aimed it, it circled back. And now it's feeding on them, demanding more, pulling at their minds, haunting their nights. This is why their homes feel heavy, why their spirits feel restless, why their eyes look hollow. They thought they could use darkness as a tool, but darkness never lets go. It lingers, it attaches, it drains, and now, instead of controlling it, they are slaves to it. Across cultures and history, this pattern has always been known. In ancient Africa, shamans warned that calling on spirits without respect or purpose would lead to torment. In Asia, stories told of entities that demanded offerings long after the summoner thought they were finished. In indigenous traditions, elders cautioned that once you open a door to darkness, closing it requires more than you bargained for. Your enemies ignored those truths, and now they're paying debts they can never repay. And here's the part that infuriates them most. None of it touched you. None of their rituals, none of their curses, none of their shadows landed where they aimed, because alignment is a shield. When your energy is anchored in truth, when your frequency is elevated, arrows of darkness don't stick, they burn up before they reach you. It's like aiming a stone at the sunday. The stone doesn't harm the sun, it disintegrates in the heat long before it gets close. That's why you're untouched. That's why you continue to rise. The universe covered you, protected you, and redirected every weapon back to the sender. So now they're haunted. Their nights are sleepless. Their thoughts spiral. Some of them even whisper to one another about shadows in their rooms, nightmares they can't shake, chills they can't explain. What they tried to send at you is now sitting in their own homes, tormenting them. This is the ultimate irony. They wanted to weaken you, but they only shackled themselves. They thought they were opening doors to power, but those doors led straight into bondage. And now the very force they summoned is demanding a debt they cannot pay. And the debt doesn't just take their peace, it takes everything. It drains their energy, their relationships, their opportunities. It eats away at their health, their sanity, their stability. They have become hosts to the very thing they thought they controlled. And you are untouched. Not because you fought them back with the same weapons, but because you never needed to. Alignment is stronger than manipulation. Light doesn't have to shout at darkness, it simply shines, and darkness flees. This is why you don't need to fear what they summon. You don't need to tremble at rituals, curses, or words spoken in shadows. The universe has already flipped the script. What they aimed at you has boomeranged back onto them. What they unleashed to destroy you is now devouring them instead. Think about how terrifying that must feel for them, to know they opened a door they can't close, to feel the weight of something they can't control, to realize that their enemy you walks free while they're shackled by the very thing they called for. That's torment they can't escape. But here's the chilling truth. This isn't where it ends, because the more they lose control, the more desperate they become. And when desperation grows, they don't stop, they double down. They scramble for another way to break you, but the harder they push, the faster they unravel. And this leads us to the next twist in their downfall. Because when they realized they couldn't tap into your energy anymore, when every door to your spirit was slammed shut, their panic only deepened. When the darkness they summoned turned against them, their next move was predictable. They panicked, because the one thing they depended on most, the ability to tap into your energy, was suddenly gone. For years, they had treated you like an open book, like a well they could drink from whenever they felt empty. But the universe changed the locks. The doors to your spirit slammed shut. Your energy became off limits. This shook them more than anything else. Manipulators thrive on access. They live off reactions, off the ability to trigger emotions, off the secret belief that they can always find a way back into your space. But when that access was cut off, it was like cutting an addict off from their supply. Withdrawal set in immediately. Picture a thief who has grown comfortable sneaking into the same house every night. The windows are always unlocked, the door always unguarded. He doesn't just steal food anymore, he feels entitled to it. Then one day, the locks are changed, the windows sealed, alarms installed. He sneaks up to the house, hungry, confident, only to find himself staring at a fortress he can't enter. His stomach twists, his anger rises, his desperation grows. That's exactly what your enemies feel now. They used to drink from your light, feeding off your peace, your creativity, your spirit. Every time they spied on you, every time they whispered lies about you, they thought they were extracting strength. But now, every attempt returns scrambled, distorted, useless. It's like trying to tune into a radio station, only to hear static. They can't reach you anymore. And this is more than spiritual, it's scientific. Neuroscience shows that manipulators can literally become addicted to the energy of others. They thrive on reactions, whether it's anger, fear, or attention. The brain releases chemicals like dopamine when they succeed in provoking you. When that access is cut off, their cortisol spikes, their dopamine crashes, and their body goes into withdrawal. That's why they're restless. That's why they look drained. They're in detox, and it's tearing them apart. But you are thriving. Because you learned the power of boundaries. You cut the strings they once pulled. You blocked the doors they once entered. You stopped giving them what they wanted most, your reaction. And that silence is deafening to them. This is why they're spiraling now. Because without your energy, they're left with their own. And their own energy is chaos. It eats them alive. They can't stand being alone with themselves. That's why they stalk, why they gossip, why they scheme. Without your light to distract them, they are forced to face their own shadows, and it terrifies them. Think about how humiliating that feels. To once believe you had unlimited access to someone's soul, only to find yourself locked out. To realize the well you drank from is dry. To understand that the source of your false confidence has been sealed off forever. That kind of loss doesn't just sting, it shatters pride. And here's the twist. They know you did it on purpose. They know you saw the patterns, trusted your instincts, and closed the doors. They feel the wall of silence every time they try to reach in. And that realization infuriates them. Because it proves you saw through them, and you didn't just see, you acted. But don't underestimate the power of this moment. This isn't just about cutting them off. This is about the universe making a declaration. Your energy is sacred. Your path is too important to be spied on. Your mission is too aligned to be interrupted. That's why access was denied. That's why the locks were changed. And now, they're unraveling. They pace floors at night, muttering questions. Why can't we read them anymore? Why can't we predict their next move? They sit in circles, frustrated, replaying strategies that no longer work. Every failed attempt only makes the silence louder. Every blocked door only deepens their panic. And the more they panic, the more desperate they become. Some lash out louder, trying to provoke you back into engagement. Others withdraw, suffocated by the weight of being cut off. But all of them share the same restless hunger because the supply they depended on is gone, and it's never coming back. That's why you must never doubt the power of your boundaries. Your silence is not weakness, it's warfare. Your refusal to respond is not avoidance, it's protection. Your decision to close doors was the universe sealing your path, and nothing terrifies them more than knowing they can't touch you anymore. But desperation never stops with silence. When manipulators lose access, they don't just quit, they scramble for another way to survive. And that's when greed takes the wheel. That's when they shift from trying to drain your energy to trying to profit from your downfall. When manipulators lose access, they don't just walk away, they pivot. And their next pivot after losing your energy was greed. If they couldn't drain you anymore, they thought they could profit off your downfall. This is how twisted their thinking became. They whispered to each other that sabotaging you would pay dividends. They told themselves, if we tear this one down, we'll rise in their place. If we block their path, we'll inherit their reward. They saw your journey, your blessings, your growth, and decided it would be easier to steal than to build. But the universe never allows theft of destiny. What's written for you cannot be transferred, cannot be sold, cannot be taken by anyone who didn't earn it. And when they tried, their greed turned into a curse. Think about it like a gambler at a poker table. He throws his last coin down, bragging about how easy the win will be. He already imagines himself rich, already spends his winnings in his mind. But when the cards are revealed, his hand is worthless. The dealer sweeps away everything he thought he had. That's exactly what your enemies experienced. They gambled on your failure, but the house of destiny always wins. Instead of riches, they ended up bankrupt. Instead of elevation, they sank. Instead of inheriting your blessings, they lost the little they had. Greed blinded them, and the bill arrived heavier than they ever imagined. History has never been kind to those who profit from betrayal. Judas sold Jesus for silver and couldn't live with the price of his decision. In modern times, people who manipulate contracts or cheat their way through businesses often find themselves in prison or scandal. Even psychology agrees betrayal may bring a short-term high, but the long-term weight of guilt and karmic consequence always outweighs the gain. That's why your enemies look restless now. Their lives unravel while yours stitches together with divine precision. Their losses stack while your blessings multiply. And it's not because you fought them, it's because their greed planted the seeds of their own collapse. But let's not miss the irony. They really thought your downfall would feed them. They imagined gathering around a table, celebrating while you wept, dividing spoils that never belonged to them. They planned a feast, but the table flipped. And now, they're starving. Imagine someone so desperate for food that they try to eat fire. At first, they believe the heat is manageable, that the flame will satisfy. But the moment it touches their tongue, it scorches them. That's what greed did to your enemies. They tried to consume what was never theirs, and the fire of your protection burned them instead. And now the shame haunts them. Because not only did they fail, they failed loudly. Their allies watched as their plans collapsed. The people who believed their promises now doubt them. The reward they bragged about never came, and now their credibility is gone. Do you see the pattern? Every scheme they built didn't just fail, it backfired. Every attempt to block you became their own stumbling block. Every move against you became a chain around their ankles. That's the power of divine alignment. But greed doesn't just collapse, it festers. And as they sit in their losses, they watch you rise higher. They scroll through your progress. They hear whispers of your growth. They see doors opening for you that no one can close, and it torments them. Because your rise is their proof. Proof that the universe is with you. Proof that their greed has only cursed them. Proof that destiny cannot be stolen. Every step you take forward is another reminder that their plan not only failed, it turned into the very weapon that broke them. And so they spiral. Some grow bitter, snapping at everyone around them. Others grow silent, hollowed out by regret. But all of them feel the same haunting truth. They bet everything on your downfall, and they lost. You, on the other hand, gained more than victory. You gained clarity. You gained resilience. You gained undeniable confirmation that no matter how many schemes rise against you, what is yours will always be yours. But here's where the story turns sharper, because watching you rise while they fall isn't just painful, it's unbearable. And soon, their torment wouldn't come from greed alone. It would come from the sight of your unstoppable ascent. Greed left them empty, but emptiness is only the beginning. What truly breaks them is watching you rise while they fall. Nothing torments an enemy more than seeing the very person they tried to destroy ascend higher than ever before. They counted on delay being your downfall. They thought setbacks would break you. They whispered, "If we block one door, they'll give up. If we create enough resistance, they'll stop trying." But what they didn't account for is that resistance doesn't kill the aligned, it strengthens them. Every obstacle they placed in your path became training. Every delay became preparation. Every betrayal became fuel. Instead of crumbling, you adjusted. Instead of slowing, you sharpened. Instead of quitting, you rose. Think of it like a runner on a track. Two runners start at the same line. One cheats, spreading oil across the other's lane, confident the slip will cause disaster. At first, the chosen runner stumbles. But they don't stop. They plant their feet harder, they focus deeper, and soon the stumble becomes a sprint. Meanwhile, the cheater is burning out, panting, losing speed. And by the end of the race, the one who stumbled is sprinting past with fire in their stride. That's you. That's why they can't sleep at night. Because nothing crushes the spirit of your enemies more than watching you succeed where they expected you to fail. Here's the irony. Every attempt to destroy you, only revealed how unstoppable you are. And now, the sight of your resilience is their torment. They can't hide from it. It stares at them from every angle. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the mental pain of holding two opposite beliefs. They told themselves you would break. They swore you couldn't survive. But reality keeps shoving your victories in their face. Their mind can't reconcile the story they built with the truth they see, and that tension eats them alive. This is why they obsessively watch you, why they stalk, why they gossip, why they whisper your name with anger, because your rise reminds them of their stagnation. Every door you walk through exposes every door still closed in their life. Every level you reach shines a light on their failures. And here's the most painful part for them. They know they caused their own downfall, because every trap they set became a stepping stone for you. Every delay they designed became the very tool the universe used to sharpen you. Your rise isn't just a story of resilience, it's a story of poetic justice. Imagine someone digging a pit, planning for you to fall in. They work tirelessly, sweating, confident. But when they're finished, the ground beneath them collapses, and they're the ones who fall into the hole. That's your enemies. Their downfall wasn't accidental, it was engineered by their own hands. And now they watch in horror as you rise above the pit they dug. You're not just surviving, you're climbing to heights they never thought you'd touch. And the more you climb, the more their shame grows. History has seen this before. Nelson Mandela walked out of prison stronger than the ones who tried to silence him. Harriet Tubman led countless to freedom while those who hunted her died empty. Even in faith traditions, figures like Joseph rose to power in the very land where his brothers tried to bury him. The pattern is timeless. Those who are aligned always rise, and those who oppose them always crumble in the shadows of their ascent. Your enemies are living that reality right now. They thought delay would define you, but delay became your destiny's gymnasium. They thought betrayal would break you, but betrayal became your breakthrough. They thought gossip would erase you, but gossip only amplified your truth. And now, they have to watch. They can't escape it. They can't ignore it. They can't unsee your rise. And that is their torment, being confronted daily with undeniable proof that nothing they tried worked. Think of the bitterness that stirs inside them when they hear your name. Think of the silence in the room when your progress is mentioned. Their faces tighten, their stomachs twist, because the very story they built against you has turned into the proof of your power. And here's the sweetest irony, you didn't even have to shout about it. You didn't have to broadcast your rise. Your resilience spoke louder than any announcement. Your actions testified in ways your words never could, and they had no choice but to witness it. That's why they are unraveling now, not just because of their failures, but because of your victories. Their downfall wouldn't sting as much if you had stayed stuck, but your success is salt in their wounds, and it's driving them to madness. But the story doesn't end with them watching you rise, because the more they saw you thrive, the more they realized something terrifying. They had built the very thing they feared most. By trying to break you, they had turned you into a beast. They thought betrayal, delay, and sabotage would weaken you, but all they did was forge iron into your soul. Every insult became fuel. Every scheme became resistance training. Every attempt to break you only pressed you deeper into the fire, and instead of being consumed, you were refined. They turned you into a beast. And this isn't the kind of beast they expected. They wanted you fragile, insecure, limping through life with scars that never healed. But what they created was the very nightmare they now fear. They pounded you with their words, but your silence grew sharper. They cornered you with obstacles, but you used every one as a stepping stone. They thought rejection would make you small, but rejection only expanded your vision. Think of how a blacksmith works. Metal is placed into fire, heated until it glows, then hammered again and again. To the untrained eye, it looks like destruction. But to the blacksmith, it's transformation. The blows don't ruin the metal, they shape it. That's you. They placed you in fire, they struck you repeatedly, but instead of breaking, you emerged stronger, harder, unshakable. Psychologists even have a term for this: post-traumatic growth. It's when people don't just survive adversity, they rise because of it. They gain wisdom they never had, resilience that can't be taught in comfort, clarity that only comes from pain. That's exactly what happened with you. Their betrayal didn't kill you, it unlocked you. And now, they can't stand the sight of what they've created. Every time they look at you, they're staring at their own failure. Because you are living proof that everything they threw at you backfired. You are the evidence that their efforts only made you stronger. Picture their fear. Imagine sitting in a room, whispering about someone you've tried to destroy, only to watch them walk in radiant, unbroken, and more powerful than ever. Their stomachs sink. Their minds spin. They think, we did this. We built the very force we now can't stop. That's their torment. And the irony runs deep. They thought you'd crumble quietly, but instead, you grew louder in spirit. They thought you'd shrink back, but you expanded. They thought pain would silence you, but pain gave you a voice sharper than ever before. The very tools they used to destroy you have become the hammers that built you into the giant standing before them. And now they are terrified, because beasts don't play by the old rules. Beasts don't back down from storms, they thrive in them. Beasts don't wait for permission, they claim territory. And you, forged by their schemes, have become untouchable in ways they never imagined. But here's the twist. They don't get to walk away from what they created. Every time they see you thriving, every time they hear your name, every time your resilience surfaces, they are reminded of the role they played in building the very thing they fear. Their attacks have become their regrets. Their betrayal has become their nightmare. Think about the paradox. They wanted you weak so they could control you. But by trying to control you, they unlocked your power. They wanted you voiceless so they could speak over you. But their attempts to silence you gave your voice authority. They wanted you small, but their schemes forced you to grow into the space they tried to steal. And now, they live with that weight. They whisper in corners, "We didn't mean for this. We didn't think it would go this far." But it's too late. The beast has already been unleashed, and there is no turning back. History testifies to this truth. Great leaders, prophets, and revolutionaries were rarely born in comfort. They were shaped by opposition. David wasn't crowned king until after Goliath. Mandela wasn't revered until after prison. Even Christ wasn't glorified until after betrayal and crucifixion. The same pattern flows through you. Greatness forged in fire, power unlocked through pain. And here's the part that leaves your enemies sleepless. They can't reverse it. They can't undo what's been done. They can't silence what they accidentally awakened. You are no longer the same person they targeted. You've become something bigger, stronger, and more unshakable than they could ever imagine. This is why they flinch now when your name comes up. This is why they avoid your presence but can't stop watching you from a distance. They know that what they created is beyond their control. They thought they were building your coffin, but they built your crown. They thought they were burying you, but they planted a seed. And now they have to live with the forest that grew. But the story doesn't end here, because as much as they regret what they've done, the universe is not finished. They thought creating a beast was the worst outcome, but there's something even more terrifying waiting for them, the aftermath of their own collapse. The beast they created was their first mistake, but what followed was worse, the collapse of everything they built. Because when lies are the foundation, truth is always the storm that brings it down. At first, they tried to hide it. They put on smiles in public, pretended their alliances were still intact, acted like their plans were moving forward, but the cracks were too wide to conceal. The whispers grew louder, the arguments more frequent. Their unity was gone, eaten alive by suspicion and betrayal. And once collapse begins, it moves fast. It starts with one betrayal, one broken promise. Then it spreads like wildfire. Suddenly, the same hands that once shook in agreement are pointing fingers. The same mouths that once chanted in unison are shouting accusations. What once felt like a circle of loyalty has become a pit of paranoia. This collapse isn't random. It's the fruit of seeds they planted themselves. Every lie they told, every deal they made in shadows, every oath whispered in greed has sprouted, and now the harvest is chaos. Think of it like a tower built with rotten wood. From a distance it looks sturdy. People gather around, admiring its height. But when the wind blows, the rot is exposed, the boards snap, and the whole tower crashes down. That's their alliances. From the outside, it looked strong. But truth was the wind, and now everything is falling apart. And don't think this collapse is quiet. No, it's loud, it's dramatic, The very people who once swore loyalty are now the ones exposing secrets. Friends are turning into enemies. Allies are leaking the very information they once vowed to protect, and the camp is bleeding from the inside out. This is what happens when people try to build power on deception. It always implodes. History shows this clearly. Kingdoms have crumbled not because of enemies outside their walls, but because of betrayal within. Armies have lost wars not because of stronger opponents, but because their own soldiers turned on one another. Even great corporations and governments have collapsed from scandal, not invasion. The rot always comes from within. That's what you're watching unfold now. The group that once stood together against you is now crumbling under the weight of their own schemes. They can't trust each other anymore. They can't plan without suspicion. Every word is questioned. Every glance feels dangerous. And here's the irony. While their world collapses, yours is being built stronger than ever. Their alliances are falling apart, but your alignment with truth is becoming unshakable. Their house is divided, but your foundation is firm. Their collapse is the clearest evidence that the universe has chosen sides. Imagine how it feels for them. To sit in the wreckage of broken promises while watching you build in silence. To choke on arguments while you breathe in peace. To scramble in betrayal while you walk in clarity. Their collapse isn't just about loss, it's about humiliation. Because they have to admit to themselves, even if only in whispers, that their downfall wasn't caused by you. It wasn't your attacks, it wasn't your retaliation, it was their own choices, their lies, their arrogance, their refusal to listen to warnings. And that realization burns them, because pride can handle losing to an opponent, but it can't handle losing to itself. This is why they're restless now, why they can't sleep, why their meetings end in shouting instead of strategy. Their alliances have collapsed, and they have no one to blame but themselves. But the story doesn't stop at collapse. Collapse always invites something darker, because in their desperation to survive, they didn't just turn on one another, they turned to forces that demanded repayment. And now, those very entities are tightening their grip. Their collapse was only the beginning. The real torment was still coming. Collapse should have been their wake-up call. It should have been the moment where they stopped, reflected, and chose another path. But arrogance doesn't retreat easily. Instead of bowing to truth, they doubled down. And in doubling down, they invited something they could never control. The entities they summoned earlier, the shadows they called into the room for help, were never their allies. Darkness doesn't sign contracts, it signs traps, and now those traps are closing. At first, it looked like power. They bragged about how nothing touched them, about how their rituals made them untouchable. They whispered with smugness, "See, we're winning, we're strong." But that confidence was short-lived, because soon, what they thought they controlled began to control them. This is the nature of darkness. It always demands payment, and it doesn't just want small sacrifices, it wants everything. Their peace, their relationships, their sanity. At first, it comes quietly. Sleepless nights, heavy dreams, strange tensions in their homes. But then it grows louder arguments, paranoia, breakdowns in health. Until finally, it's clear, the thing they unleashed has turned on them. Imagine someone who opens the door to a storm, thinking they can gather just a little rainwater. But storms don't pause at the threshold. They flood, they tear down walls, they devour everything in their path. That's exactly what's happening to them now. The energy they called has become their cage, and they are trapped inside. And here's the irony. None of it touched you. None of the curses landed. None of the shadows reached you. Your alignment repelled everything. You didn't even need to fight back, light fought for you. The arrows they sent burned up before they reached your spirit, and that infuriates them. Because not only are they suffering, they're suffering while you remain untouched. That's the torment. To know they poured energy into stopping you, only for it to circle back and chain them instead. To know that the fire they lit scorched their own house. To realize that while they're unraveling, you're thriving. It's salt in their wounds. And this torment isn't quiet. It shows in their faces. They look drained, older, restless. Their words carry the weight of fear. Their homes feel heavy. Their nights are sleepless. Their days haunted by regret. They whisper about shadows in corners, about nightmares they can't shake, about seeing things that aren't there. They don't say it loudly, but they know. They are haunted by what they summoned. Cultures across the world have warned of this. In Africa, elders taught that spirits invited without respect would feed on their summoners. In Asia, stories were told of demons who promised protection but demanded generations of repayment. In indigenous traditions, leaders cautioned against calling forces without alignment, because those forces would consume everything in their path. Your enemies ignored every warning, and now they are living those very truths. And the worst part, they can't escape. Once darkness tastes blood, it doesn't let go. Once a contract is signed in arrogance, it doesn't cancel easily. They can't run from what they invited. They can't beg it to leave. It sits with them, it sleeps in their homes, it eats at their peace, and every day, it grows stronger. Meanwhile, you rise. Your light expands. Your path glows brighter. The more they sink, the higher you climb. And that contrast is unbearable for them. They thought they could drag you down into darkness, but instead, their own lives have been dragged into chaos while yours moves with divine precision. And here's the truth they whisper to themselves at night, even if they'll never say it aloud. We lost. We unleashed something we can't control. And now, we're paying the price. But the universe isn't finished, because while they are being consumed by the entities they summoned, you are stepping into something greater. You are moving into a season where your energy is completely off limits, completely protected, completely untouchable. And that protection is not just a shield, it is a wall they cannot climb, a lock they cannot break. Their torment is just beginning, but your rise is only accelerating. Their torment grew heavier each day, but what truly drove them into madness was the realization that your energy was no longer theirs to touch. For years, they believed they had access, like thieves who thought your soul was an open window. They poked, they prodded, they drained. They convinced themselves they could read your life like an open book, predict your every step, feed off your light as if it were a right. But the universe closed the book, it sealed the well, it locked every door they thought they owned a key to. Your energy became completely off limits, and that truth cut them deeper than any sword ever could. They tried every trick to regain entry. They attempted old manipulations, expecting you to react as you once did. They tested boundaries, waiting for the cracks to show. They even sent others to dig, to spy, to prod, but nothing worked. Every attempt returned void. Every scheme was denied. Your spirit had become unreachable. Imagine what that feels like for them. Picture someone addicted to a drug suddenly cut off from their supply. Their hands shake, their mind races, their body panics. That's what they're living now, withdrawal from your energy. And psychology proves it. Manipulators and narcissists often thrive on reactions, whether it's anger, fear, or even attention. Those reactions feed them like oxygen. But once you stop giving them what they crave, their system crashes, their cortisol spikes, their dopamine plummets, and their entire nervous system goes into chaos. That's why they can't sit still. That's why they look drained. That's why they act out more desperately now than ever. Meanwhile, you are thriving, because silence became your weapon, boundaries became your shield, your refusal to engage became your greatest act of power. You stopped feeding them, and in doing so, you starved their schemes. And this silence terrifies them more than anything else, because silence is louder than gossip. Silence is more powerful than retaliation. Silence says, you no longer matter here. And to someone who thrives on attention, nothing is more devastating. Think of a thief returning to a house he used to rob, only to find every window sealed, every lock reinforced, alarms waiting at every corner. He doesn't just leave hungry, he leaves humiliated, because the house is no longer vulnerable. That's you now, sealed, guarded, untouchable. This is why they whisper about you now with bitterness, why they can't stop circling your name in conversations, why they keep trying to figure you out, even though they can't. Because you've become a mystery to them. You've become unreadable. You've become the one thing they can't infiltrate. And the truth is, that's driving them insane. Because in their arrogance, they believed they would always have access. They thought they'd always have an inside look. They thought you'd never change the locks. But you did. And now, every failed attempt is a reminder that their time is over. This is confirmation for you. Your boundaries are divine. They are not just personal, they are spiritual. The universe built walls around you because your path is too sacred, your mission too critical, your destiny too aligned. You cannot be spied on anymore. You cannot be drained anymore. You cannot be touched. And the irony? The more they try, the more they unravel. The more desperate they become, the more chaos consumes them. Because the harder they push, the more evident it becomes that they have no power left. But manipulators rarely stop at silence. When they realize they can't touch you anymore, when they finally accept that your energy is sealed, they grow desperate in another way. They shift from trying to drain your energy to trying to profit off your downfall. And when that fails, they're left with nothing but the torment of watching you rise while they fall. Watching you rise while they fall became the punishment they never saw coming. It's one thing to fail quietly, it's another to fail publicly, in plain sight of the very one they targeted. And that is their torment now. Every step you take forward, every door that opens, every blessing that lands in your life is another reminder that their schemes didn't just collapse, they backfired. They thought you'd stumble forever. They swore you'd never recover. They whispered in confidence, just wait, soon they'll disappear. But the opposite has happened. You are still here. You are still standing. You are not only surviving, you are thriving, and your resilience has become their nightmare. Nothing cuts deeper than seeing the person you tried to bury bloom in the very soil you cursed. Nothing shakes the spirit like realizing that every attempt to sabotage only became fertilizer for someone else's growth. And that's the truth they have to face every single day. Think of the irony. They thought rejection would make you small, but rejection became your redirection. They thought betrayal would silence you, but betrayal became your strength. They thought delay would stop you, but delay became divine timing. Every weapon they formed became the very tool the universe used to sharpen you. And now, they sit in the wreckage of their choices, whispering regrets they never thought they'd have to admit. They say things like, "I didn't sign up for this," or "This wasn't supposed to happen." They thought they were signing up for easy work, for quick rewards. But what they signed up for was torment, regret, and the slow unraveling of their own lives. Meanwhile, you've turned into something they can't categorize. You are no longer the fragile version of yourself they thought they could play with. You've become stronger, wiser, sharper. You've become a storm they can't endure, a flame they can't handle, a presence they can't survive. And this is the part that seals their fate. There is no exit. They can't undo what they set in motion. They can't reverse the law of cause and effect. They can't erase the reflection they saw in your resilience. The universe doesn't let contracts written in greed be broken without consequence. So now they whisper among themselves, trembling, "I want out. I didn't know it would be like this." But the deal is over. The assignment failed. The watchers became the haunted. The predators became the prey, and the battlefield they thought was yours has consumed them instead. And what about you? You stand untouched, not because you fought them in their way, but because you refused to bend. Your silence was your sword, your discipline was your defense. Your alignment was your shield. You didn't need to collapse their camp, the universe did it for you. So remember this, you were never just surviving their schemes, you were the battlefield itself. Your presence alone dismantled deception. Your existence became the mirror that showed them everything they weren't, and that mirror broke them. They came thinking they were hunters. They left shaking like prey. They came for information. They left with trauma. They came expecting easy work. They left whispering, "I didn't sign up for this." Every single person they sent to watch you came back more broken than when they left. They thought they were signing up for easy work, but instead they stepped into a battlefield they couldn't survive. And now they're trembling, whispering, "I didn't sign up for this. I want out." That's the sound of defeat, chosen one. That's the echo of the very same people who once swore they'd monitor you, study you, dissect your every move, now begging for release from the very deal they entered. Their assignment wasn't supposed to end like this, but the universe made sure it did. Now, imagine this for a moment. Imagine a group of people lining up like soldiers trained to keep watch over you as if you were some enemy of the state. They believed they were about to crush you, that keeping tabs on your life was going to hand them the keys to their victory. But the moment they looked too closely, the moment they stepped into your energy, it was like staring into the sun without protection, blinding, burning, unforgiving. They weren't prepared for the light, the intensity, the resilience that radiates from you. And so they staggered back, not stronger, but scarred, not successful, but haunted. That's the metaphor for what you've done to them simply by existing, by being unshakably you. And here's the fact. Throughout history, those who attempt to surveil and suppress the strong always end up losing themselves in the process. Think about the secret police in crumbling empires. Think about the spies who lost their minds, staring too deeply into the lives of the very people they were trying to trap. The human psyche is not built to monitor greatness without being damaged by it. It's like trying to hold fire in your bare hands. You're the flame, and they're the fools who thought they could handle it. They thought they could survive the assignment, but the assignment has consumed them instead. And thank you for being here. Don't forget to press like, subscribe, and share this message so more souls can hear the truth. This is not just content, it's a mission, a movement, a force we are all a part of. Together, we amplify what the universe has already set in motion.